Hey Amanda, um, I just watched your video about objectivity um, and subjectivity, and these are just some of my thoughts on some of the points that you brought up there. Um, well, if you're speaking from a sort of materialist reductionist point of view, or slash atheist point of view, uh, there's no such thing as an objective moral standard. Um, that's something you just have to accept. I understand that. Well, it's my interpretation from watching some of your videos that you think there's an objective moral standard can be derived by the application of logic and reason. But I don't think you're right there in that respect. There are, for example, there are rational arguments to be made against slavery, against the subjugation and the domination of others. But there are also rational arguments to be made for slavery and for the subjugation and domination of others from the practical sense of, say, of one country subjugating and dominating the populace of another country because they have something that they want. A country A wants something, they use force to subjugate and dominate country B and enslave the populace. And there's no objective way of deciding which one is right and which one is not. We may have a sort of a what some may call an innate sense of what is right and what is wrong, but there's nothing to suppose that is correct. Now, from my point of view, slavery is wrong. From my point of view, the subjugation and domination of others is wrong. But not everyone thinks like that. And who's to say who is right and who is wrong if there is no overarching sort of morality? And as an atheist yourself, I think you're kind of forced into that realization. I think Grey Tex is right there. As far from his point of view, it's not something that I adhere to. It's not something that I believe in myself. Being a religious person, obviously. As far as truth goes, well, the same applies. There's no objective truth about moral standards or anything like that. It's really decided by the majority. It's decided by mob rule, and it can also be decided by the individual. And who really is to say this is the right thing to do or that is the wrong thing to do? Who gets to decide? And by what criteria do you decide? And I think that's one of the things that religion offers. It takes that conundrum away from people. They look to the sort of the religious leaders and the great thinkers and the philosophers to shape and structure a morality that they can sign up to. Now, of course, none of this proves whether or not a God exists or anything like that, But I mean, I think that's something that religion has in its favour in that respect. Yes, I know that it can be abused. Things can be excused under the banner of religion, and you see that in some of the Arab states there, where you can have beheadings, and you can have the cutting off of thieves' hands and things like that. And from their point of view, that's perfectly morally okay. But to my eyes, at least, it's appalling. So that's the difficulty we have. Your morality is rather depends on where you're brought up, what your experiences are. And in a world, I think, in a world where without a religious outlook, what some people fear is that, as Dostoevsky put it in the Brothers Karamazov, one of the characters says that if God is not, then everything is permissible. And to some extent, that's true. That's something that you should be worried about. But I don't think that the world's suddenly going to degenerate into everyone running around like madmen, But it does lead to things like this, as we've been debating recently, this anarchist nonsense. And this under the guise of freedoms, and under the guise of rights. That people have the right to do this and have the right to do that. That's one of the things that I meant to bring up in a past video, that it's something that people don't understand, is what with rights come responsibilities, and with rights come conflicting rights. The right to decide who you want to give your services to, or who you associate with, can be in direct conflict with the people who in direct conflict with the rights of people not to be discriminated against. So that there are conflicting rights, and in a civilized society, that's a balancing act that has to be achieved. But for some reason, these balloons don't seem to be able to grasp this. But anyway, you were then talking about separating emotion from logic and from reason, to whenever you're talking about important decisions. And it's not completely separate, and I understand you said it has to be informed by there has to be some sort of emotional element to it. Yes, and it has to be a balancing act. A balancing act has to be achieved. But I'd be very wary about over-reliance on logic and reason to shape society. And one of the reasons is this: there's nothing illogical about social Darwinism. There's nothing inherently illogical about eugenics. But quite frankly, I find that those concepts disgusting and a bit frightening.